Good evening, Tri-Valley. It's 7:00 p.m. Could you please join me for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, justice for all. Good evening again. At this time, I'm going to ask for a roll call of the Board of Education. Joseph Galone.
Here.
Pat Kelly. Pat Kelly.
Here, sorry.
Kim Botsford.
Here.
Erin Metnish.
Here.
Kathy Papo.
Here.
Brent Clark.
Here.
Randy McGregor.
Here.
Keith Stryker.
Here.
We have Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Michael Williams.
Here.
We also have Mr. Bob Whitaker.
Here.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to move through the agenda. There are no items of correspondence, no public comment session for items that are on tonight's agenda, no presentations or guests. So we go right to the superintendent's report, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I have a couple of quick items before I introduce Mr. Whitaker. First, I'm happy to report that the district has reached a collective bargaining agreement with the TESA at Tri-Valley. TESA is our support staff. We negotiated this over the last, I'd say 3 or 4 months. I'm pleased that I think it's a fair contract. It was a relatively enjoyable experience, as enjoyable as negotiations can be. And I'm happy that we settled on a 4-year deal. And board members tonight will be hopefully voting to accept that proposal. Secondly, remind everybody that Fall 2 sports has begun. Practices started at the beginning of this week. Everything's going very well. We're just waiting for Mother Nature to help us and clear some of the fields off so we can have some home contests. Hopefully next week we'll start that process as the weather gets warmer. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Whitaker, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Human Resources, who will go through the capital component of the budget proposal for you. Mr. Whitaker.
Almost, Mr. Williams, the program component tonight.
I'm sorry, the program component.
I thought you were trying to throw me a curveball, but I was listening. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Bob?
Good. So the program component, Aaron, I would love to see my share screen thing so I can bring that up there, but I don't see it right this second on me, but I'm neophyte at times, but I think I know where it is. So the program component, which basically is where the education takes place, all the teachers, the support staff, a lot of the extracurriculars, the transportation, anything related to our daily work with the students. This has been a challenging component, and I didn't expect it not to be this year. This is a lot of effort, a lot of discussions amongst administrators and Mr. Williams and I, and this is where it stands right this minute, and I want to go over some of the highlights with you. As it stands right now, it represents an increase of just over $600,000, which is a 2.26% increase over last year, which is approximately 1.7% of the overall budget. In the salaries and benefits, we're in anticipation of a 200-day staff member moving to 240 days. Increases with the TVTA, TESA, TVAA, and confidential management with some agreements pending, and you're working on that tonight. PRS and ERS contribution increases. The big component of this, and I'm being very conservative here, grants that we receive from the federal level have been very interesting this year. Grants that normally have been in operation, approved, and moving forward back in October are now getting tentative approvals, excuse me. Also, money is yet to flow through. So this component, as it stands right now, has an additional $624,000 in it that normally would be allocated through grant expenditures. Miraculously, just about washes out the other part. As we speak this moment, being conservative, I've left them in the general fund versus paying them out of the federal fund. Mr. Williams and I have had a lot of discussions on these. So it's a little daunting to look at that right now. Information flow has been minimal related to the state budget, federal levels and other areas, but we do believe that we'll hear more. But it is middle of March, we're crowding April already. On the forefront of the New York State budget, very little news on that. Aid that has been presented to us is what it is. It's a presentation. So these numbers, and I'm fully confident, Mike and I talk about it quite a bit. I'm fully confident that there'll be more clarity in the coming weeks. It's just that you can't be clear if you don't know what's going on. So, but that's in there. But the key part I want to emphasize that our goal here is about our educational programming. We're assessing our programming to prioritize and maximize our expenditures. And our goal is to provide students with a complete educational experience next year. That goes from not only their classroom work, but from their extracurriculars, their field trips, to make sure that our students come back and that we provide what they need. This budget will be driven on my end by student needs and how we address our students. And I think that's a commitment that our entire team has made. So that's a part that Mike and I have talked, that's a non-negotiable for us. Educational component and educational programming for our kids is very important. Once again, as with the other components, the health buyouts now included in the health insurance line, and the health insurance is based on a 15% increase. So you're looking at a budget right now when we combine all components, which we will do next meeting, that is showing a substantial increase next year. All three components have an increase in that. This is basically a rollover budget with no major changes. There are some that we are looking at that you will see in more clarity the next meeting, because the next meeting will be one in which we will present the three-part budget, give you an update on all three of the components, look at the revenue. How are we going to pay for this next year? Have a serious discussion on tax cap, which we're going to go over in a little bit. And then also any news on the budget forefront, federal and statewide. I remain confident that we'll be able to provide our teachers and our staff a safe environment next year that will be one that is going to be filled with educational experience, and at the same time be cognizant that our taxpayers are the people that pay for this. And that's just because of the commitment of everybody in this district. They are very helpful to me on every level, and I greatly appreciate it. Any questions?
So I have one question. I was just looking through here, Bob. So our line item then for field trips for both secondary and elementary has not changed from last year, the 2019 school year, to the upcoming school year, correct? The numbers are identical.
Right.
Just for clarification purposes for the community, we have not eliminated field trips. We're trying to keep things as status quo and normal as possible for the 2021-2022 school year.
That is a commitment we're here. I mean, it's a bold commitment, but I believe that, we're not we don't need to play the shell game to do it either. I mean, we're going to talk about it. And like I said, when I feel completely comfortable and Mr. Williams feels completely comfortable on what the picture is going to look like from the states and the feds, which we hope will come, I think then we can really start looking at everything. But that is our commitment. And, I think we'll be able to maintain that commitment, hopefully 100%.
Bob and I, if I can interject, Bob and I actually talked specifically about field trips earlier this week, and we are both committed that upon a return to school, to whatever normalcy looks like, if we are permitted to hold off campus events and do field trips and things like that, we want to maximize and even expand that program, because kids are simply going to need the completely rounded educational experience, and the classroom is only a part of that experience. And we need to do our best to maximize opportunities outside of the campus as well. So we are committed to making next year, as I said, hopefully we're back to making next year a really incredible year for our students and being fiscally responsible at the same time.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that.
I do have a quick question for you, Bob. Regarding the pre-K salaries, there's a substantial increase going from this year to next year. That's where the grant piece comes in that you were talking about, reallocating
Yeah,
money that normally.
you're 100% right, Mr. Kelly, because that program basically has almost been completely grant funded over the course of time, and it's basically driven by numbers. This current year, and I think we had a discussion prior to the start of this school year before we really knew what was going on that's a lot of salaries and benefits to put in there. So that current huge increase of almost $180,000 is based upon no grant money. And I just saw earlier today, or yesterday, I believe it was, there was something from the Office of Early Education that came down the pike. It really was not informational, but they were talking more about closing out this year and having audits and looking at things. And yet, Mr. Williams and I had another discussion. If you read through the executive portion of the budget, every year there's a commitment to increasing pre-K programs, but the commitment is, is it there in dollars and cents, or is it, that's the big thing. And the state, and not blaming them, not knowing truly what their fiscal situation is, I understand how difficult it must be for them to commit certain dollars.
Bob, I have another question. I have another question for you. Under transportation, there's a decrease of $28,000. Is this just moving around services from one category to another?
In transportation?
District transportation.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, if you look at that line item, district transportation, okay. It used to be, and last year when we adopted the budget, we had a shared transportation manager. That $58,000 that you see in there is what it used to cost us through BOCES to share district transportation services for a coordinator. I think you're aware this year we have taken basically the same person and contractually obligated for them to help us. That saves us money in the long run because they're able to consolidate runs in a normal year. So basically the difference there is I'm not paying BOCES. I'm able to go to a contractual obligation that we're paying something, and it is a savings there. And that number actually, it might be a little high, it might be, but not much. But so that money is one that I've always found to be well spent because it helps keep. It's our conduit and our liaison to make sure that we have the proper number of runs. We're getting the biggest bang for our buck because transportation costs, as with anything else, are going up.
So we're no longer in contract then for shared services with BOCES for that particular
Right.
item. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, Bob, you want to discuss now the tax cap calculation?
Sure. Okay. In the wonderful world of tax cap calculation, for those that see it, this is the year that we now have a negative tax cap. I believe I shared with all of you the backup documentation that shows why this came to fruition. A lot of this is driven by information we have no control over. These are numbers that are given to us. The only control we have is looking at last year's tax levy, which was a 0% levy increase. If we scroll down to the lower half of that where it says exemptions and the increase in local portion of capital expenditures, there is the huge number difference. If you look at the $1.324 million number, that represents our building aid. This year, we are seeing the anomaly. Our normal building aid since I've gotten here have ranged in the ballpark $830,000. So there is a $500,000 increase in building aid. Wow, that's great. It's a 1-year anomaly because building aid, when you start receiving it, goes for 15 years and then it expires. We happen to be in the 1 year that we are maximizing our building aid. Next year, a building project from 2004 is coming off the books in state aid, and next year's aid will be reduced quite a bit. The reason this shows up as zero, even though if you do the calculations on that number, it's actually a negative $25,000 ballpark, but it always populates at this on the Office of the State Controller at zero. So when we go through the entire thing, our tax cap calculated is a negative $168,000 for next year, which is a negative 0.8%. We could do whatever we, not do whatever we want, but we could make a change from that. But the minute we go $1 greater than that as a tax levy, we're required to have a supermajority approval rate, which is 60%. But if you look at the $168,000 loss of potential income versus the $500,000 of increase in building aid, we truly are finding a net of $340,000 for next year. That's all predicated upon the state of New York paying us our full aid. So as negative as that looks, that we're, oh no, we're in the whole $168,000 and we haven't even started on revenue, we're truly in the long run ahead of the game, and it is an anomaly for next school year. But that's part of the discussions we have when we get to revenue. But just to make you sure, once we change that by $1 more, we would be required for a 60% supermajority to approve the budget. Any other questions?
No? Thank you very much, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
All right. Are there any items the board wishes pulled from tonight's consent agenda? No. Okay, I need a motion and a second. Motion Kim, second Aaron. Any discussion? If not, please proceed to vote yes by raising your right hand. Mr. McGregor, there we go. Norma, that is unanimous. Next, board committee reports. We have a first reading for policy number 010, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. That will be on the next board agenda for approval. Next, old business. There are no items of old business. No public comment session for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Mr. Williams, have you received any notification from the public?
I have not.
Okay. Announcements, reminders, upcoming events.
I'd like to remind everybody that tomorrow is a virtual day. Teachers will be getting vaccinated tomorrow, so all students are virtual. And then I also want to remind elementary school parents that we will be open for business next Monday, March 8th.
Excellent. Anybody else have any comments or announcements? All right, next we have new business. Annual legal notice for transportation requests to non-public schools. Be it resolved, the board approves the following annual resolution. Attention, parents of non-public school students. The Tri-Valley Central School, in accordance with Section 3635 of the Education Law, requires that requests for transportation to a non-public school for the 21-2022 school year be submitted in writing prior to April 1, 2021. Tri-Valley residents should submit their requests to District Clerk, Tri-Valley Central School District, 34 Moore Hill Road, Brownsville, New York, 12740, by order of the Board of Education. I need a motion and a second. Motion Joe, second Kathy. Any discussion? Please proceed to vote by raising your right hand. That is unanimous, Norma. Next, we have the appointment of external auditors for the school year ended June 30, 2021. Be it resolved, the board approves the appointment of Nugent and Housel, PC, to audit the financial statements of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the fiduciary fund, including the related notes to the financial statements, which collectively comprise the basic financial statements of the Tri-Valley Central School District as of and for the school year ended June 30th, 2021. I need a motion and a second. Motion Brent, second Aaron. Any discussion? Please proceed to vote yes by raising your right hand. Norma, that is unanimous. Next, we have the tax cap calculation, which was just outlined by Mr. Whitaker. Be it resolved, the board approves the tax cap calculation for the 2021-2022 school year. I need a motion and a second. Motion Joe, second Kim. Any discussion? Please proceed to vote by raising your right hand. That is unanimous, Norma. Next, we have the Municipal Advisor Services Agreement. Be it resolved, the board approves the Municipal Advisor Services Agreement between Tri-Valley Central School and Munistat Services, Inc. at an annual fee of $3,000 as attached to the public portion of the agenda. Need a motion and a second? Motion Keith, second Kathy. Any discussion? Please proceed to vote by raising your right hand. That is unanimous, Norma. Next, we have the fuel bid award for 2021-2022. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools that the Board of Education award the following fuel bid awards as accepted through our cooperative purchasing agreement with BCMO BOCES for the 2021-2022 school year as attached to the public portion of the agenda. Need a motion and a second. Motion Joe, second Randy. Any discussion? Please proceed to vote by raising your right hand. That is also unanimous, Norma. Next, we have the Memorandum of Agreement, Tri-Valley Central School District and TESA. Be it resolved, the board ratifies and approves the Memorandum of Agreement between the Tri-Valley Central School District and TESA for the time period July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2025. This MOA was negotiated during the school year 2020-2021. Need a motion and a second. Motion Joe, second Kim. Any discussion?
Carrie, I'm going to abstain on this one. I have not had a chance to review it.
Okay. Any other comments? Please proceed to vote yes by raising your right hand. Okay. Norma, that is 8 yes. And then we have Pat who is abstaining. So that motion moves forward. At this time, we have no need to go into an executive session. I need a motion and a second to adjourn. Motion Kim, second Aaron. Please proceed to vote by raising your right hand. That is unanimous. It is 7:22 p.m. Be well, Tri-Valley. Continue to wash your hands, wear the face masks, and we will see you all soon. Have a very good night.
I,
Aye.
You guys.